I already fixed the cup.
Oh, okay. Good?
Yeah, good.
All right, let's go. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Who and How Club. It's your boy Aristajon checking in once again. We got to the milestone of this journey, this Who and How Club journey. You are the Who and How Club. I am the Who and How Club. We are the Who's and How's of this world. And without you, without me, there is no we. And that's why I created this platform. We reached the milestone of the 50th episode. Now we're moving into the new regime and this new energy and this new transition of another 50. And all we're doing right now and focusing on is accomplishing goals. And we're bringing things to another level. This show isn't just about me. I created this platform to bring people on, to create some sort of safe space so that people could share pieces of their lives, their stories, their perspectives. Whether I agree with them or not, whether you agree with them or not, it's not relevant. It's just about sharing and learning from one another. And that's the goal of this platform. So here's the spot where we ask you who you are and how you became the you that you are today and everything in between. And we all also focus on the 5 W's, you know, the who, what, when, where, whys, and hows, because we are the who's and hows. A lot of people don't know how to answer that question, who are you? So we focus on that today. And we have a special guest sitting across from me. We're on a social distance episode. That's what I'm going to call this one.
The big table.
We didn't mean for it to look like this, but it just fits. It fits the mode and
I'm okay with it.
And the energy. I'm good with it too. I like the fact that we're in nature. That's what has me in my zone right now. So we got a really dope guest on today's show. You want to introduce yourself to the people, sir?
I go by the name of Big Tweeze. People call me that, but my name is Anthony, Anthony Corsi. I used to produce hip-hop music. I still do it from time to time. I used to DJ from time to time. Just an all-around kind of music guy,
Yes. I actually met Tweezy like some odd years ago. I don't know if he remembers this or not, but we're going to get into that on how I first met him and the connection within that and leading up to this moment here. There's been a lot of time that has passed since I first met you.
Interesting.
So,
yeah.
So I'm sure.
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I don't.
It's great. It's
I don't.
Gonna be great.
I
it's
love
gonna
it.
Be great.
Yeah.
I think you were a different version. There was a different version of Tweezy at the time that I met you.
100%.
But Carlos, my manager in the background, he's the one that introduced. I don't know if you remember, I came to your house and you, it was like a collective and you were showing me beats and stuff like that. I was really young. And I think I came with a girl. Was I with a girl? No, I think I was with a girl.
Would this have been Roxton? Would this have been the studio house, or would this have been like Gray Street times, that studio house? Roxton, yeah, okay, yeah. 30 Rocks.
I was young. I was a young buck though.
Okay.
And Carlos, he's been a mentor of mine since I was like 18.
Okay.
So I don't just podcast. I'm into music.
I vaguely
and
remember
stuff.
this. Now hold on. For those of you who don't know me, I should preface this by saying I do smoke a little marijuana from time to time.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? A little bit. I smoke, but I don't inhale.
I don't recognize you. You looked very different back then. And we're gonna talk about that journey.
It's funny.
And transition.
We earlier before the podcast started, we were talking about like how many different. Every decade is kind of like a new lifetime in its own, right?
I overheard that.
So
that. And I agree with that.
Definitely, man. Like if we're talking rocks and times, that's at least a decade ago. That's a whole.
You were a different Tweezy.
Oh my God, a whole lifetime ago, man.
So here at the show, thank you for being on the show. Let's cheers to today's episode, by the way, if you can.
There you go.
Mazel tov.
Socially distanced cheers in.
Yes. You guys see the logo. Shout out to everybody that's joining us on the live today. Here on the show, Tweezy, we focus on who people are and how they became the who's that they are. I'm curious to know, how would you answer the question, who are you? Like, if I were to ask that, if I didn't know you at all, you know, I'm a stranger and I'm like, hey, who are you? That's how we initially, you know, greet each other.
It's really interesting because the way the conversation that we're having it, as we're having it like this, right now, if I were to answer that question, I would say, oh, I'm Anthony Corsi. I'm a father of 2.
Yes.
I don't even like, it's funny because people now will be like, oh, yo, this is my boy Tweezy. And then I will come behind them and be like, hey, my name is Anthony. You know what I mean? Because I'm like fucking 43 years old and I don't want to be.
You don't want to be known as Tweezy.
You know what I mean?
You're more than Tweezy.
Well, and then it's funny because everybody used to call me Big Tweeze. And now that I've lost all this weight, which is a whole other thing, right?
We're going to talk about
right?
that. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, it's like, oh, so I'm like, hey, I'm Anthony, you know? So if you were to ask me who I am and like how I got to this point, I mean, shit.
Like, who are you now?
I am someone's father now. You know what I'm saying? That's who I am now.
What does that mean to you, being a father?
It means a responsibility that I probably lived an entire life up until this point not having. You know what I'm saying? learning to be responsible for other shit other than myself. You know what I mean?
On my show, I'm very transparent with the listeners and supporters, especially with Father's Day recently passing. I speak a lot about not knowing who my father is, and really just there's like a piece of me that I don't know because there's no name, no picture, no nothing.
Right.
So it's like I know where I was raised and everything like that and who raised me, but there's still half of me that it's like a question mark, you know, which kind of leads to like the logo of the podcast. It's like 2 question marks intertwined. So there are all these question marks in our lives all the time, right?
I share that with you in the fact that my mother passed away when I was super young. So I didn't know what it was
to have a mom
like that.
Your biological mother.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I had a stepmother, my grandmother.
You had versions of mothers,
Exactly.
mother figures.
Right. It wasn't until I had my own children to see what my children were getting from their mother to realize what I hadn't gotten from my own. You get what I'm saying? So that's a whole a part of, like you saying, who are you now? That's like things that I'm starting to realize a lot more about myself that I probably over the last 40 years never even thought about. You know what I mean? Shit like that.
So I've thought about, like, because I don't have a father, maybe when I do have children, I know what it means to not have one, so I'll be a great one. Do you find that does happen? Like you said, not having your mother in your life, your biological mother, but you see how your wife is a mother to your child. So what kind of perspective do you have on that? Like when you see her mothering your child?
It's interesting because it's like I think about, once again, not knowing what that is. You know what I mean? To see that.
Like, how do you know she's mothering right? That's what I want to ask.
I mean, shit.
From your perspective.
From my perspective?
Yeah.
Because how everybody comes to me and tells me how happy my kids are. Like, oh, and like I'm talking about people from all walks of life, people from within my family, people who don't even like, you know, like, oh, random people on the street will be like, oh, your kids look so happy. You know what I mean? That's how I know.
Is she fitting that mold in your mind of like what the mother of your child looked like? Like maybe when you were younger, you thought about having a kid one day and you're like, you hope the woman that you do share a child with is this kind of mom.
I just guess at the end of the day, it's like you want somebody who's going to be caring towards children. I work in the school system too, right? So there's a whole other thing within that too. Like children, I understand the value of children. Something I didn't probably, even like being a guy who worked in the school system for as long as I have, probably didn't recognize that. You know what I mean?
Up until you had your own child.
Exactly. Right.
So how'd you spend Father's Day this year? What was Father's Day like for you?
Father's Day this year, my parents actually came over here and we barbecued.
Okay.
Right.
And that was how old's your child, if you don't mind me asking?
My son is 7, my daughter's 4.
Okay. So you've been enjoying this Father's Day celebration for a minute now. For a minute, yeah. So what's the relationship like with your father then, with the not knowing who your mother is?
Oh, great, because my father was always there. My father was like he had to pick up those pieces. You know what I'm saying? So
I've said that about my mom as well. She's played an entire, even whether we get along or not, you're always going to have those battles with your parents. But if you're a child who only has had one parent, they have picked up the slack. They've been both for you, right?
So you did not have a step parent?
No.
See, I did.
Oh. Okay.
So that changed the dynamic too, right? Which is something that I think, I think, you know, when you're a kid and you don't
It fills a
understand-
gap. It fills a bit
sure,
of a gap.
right?
Yeah.
But as you get older and you start to see the world in a different way, you look at it differently as well, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yes. I'm excited. Your goals for me. Like, I'm excited to have a child one day. You know what I mean?
I mean,
and
don't
be
rush to
tested.
get growing.
No
right?
rush. No rush. No rush.
Get
But
growing.
that I can't wait to have that perspective and outlook on life with knowing what it means to not have something, but forming something out of that. Like, it doesn't mean that things will
100%.
always be bad, you know? Like, you could take that and use it and make it into something beautiful, you know? Be a great father and stuff like that. So
I think, but that's the thing, like, as we were talking about it earlier, right? Like, I think your life experiences prepare you for everything, right? You know what I'm saying? So now I can only, like, it's funny, I was talking with my partner and I was saying to her, you know, like, life changes like that. You know what I mean? And because
in a year, even
in a day, in a blink of an eye,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like, it can change all like that. And I try and teach that to my kid.
Yes.
And sometimes I'm harsh about it. You know what I mean? But, like, that's how it has to be sometimes, you know?
Personal, like, selfish question.
Sure.
Do you battle with like a favorite when it comes to your children?
No.
Like,
No,
I want to know. I always wondered that. Like, do people really go through that?
It's funny because, like,
Or is it like you're my favorite today, but yesterday you were a little dick, you know? Like,
oh, no, see, and that's how it goes because every day is like that, right?
like,
so now
share some father, like, you
it's
know?
funny. My girl is a goldsmith.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what she actually does.
Yeah.
So she made me this. Speaking of Father's Day, she made me this chain for Father's Day one year.
Yeah.
And it's a double-sided chain. One side says Lennox, one side says Loretta.
Your children.
My
Yeah.
kids' names, right?
Yeah.
So my daughter loves to ask me all the day, "Hey, Daddy, what day is today?" And I'll look at the chain.
Is
'Cause
it
when I
Lennox Day or
is it a Lennox Day or is it a Loretta Day?
That's
right?
sick. That's sick.
So now it's very funny because sometimes she'll just randomly ask, "Hey, Daddy, what day is today?" And I'll look at the chain and it'll be like, "Oh, it's a Lennox Day today." And it's fucking funny how it is a Lennox Day that day, or it is a Loretta Day that day. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just funny
That's
how
a
it
dope
works.
connection.
Like
That's
how
a
it
dope
works
connection.
out like that. Yeah.
So going back to, like, the many names that you've gone by.
Right.
So you prefer to go by just Anthony. That's how you feel,
I mean,
right?
but like
in this moment.
my friends call me Tweezy. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like it's not uncommon.
I was talking to Carlos on my way here, and I'm like, I remember there was a name that I did know you by when he would talk about you to me as a producer. It was Tony.
Fat Tony. That's right. And that was like my first production name.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I was familiar with that name
Yeah.
because, like, how Carlos and I met, it's like, even though I'm young, I know the shits about, like, Toronto stuff to an extent, you know? Like, I remember being a kid and I know about Urs and I know about Cardi and Figure 4 and all of that. We would have those conversations, and that's what brought us.
Which is, you know, like, I have a super penchant for, like, I love Toronto hip hop. You know what I mean? I do a podcast with Thrust about it.
Yes.
I at a point in time only used to play Canadian hip hop. You know what I mean?
Listen,
like,
in 2001, I was living in my mom had us staying in a hotel.
Okay.
Right? We were living out of a hotel. Long story, but I just remember watching much music, and I just remember Thrust on. It's the it's the and like, and I'm like a kid.
Thrust,
I'm a
OG,
kid, right?
you know?
And I'm like, that's the shit, right? But when you're a kid, I just looked at them as artists. I didn't know, oh, they're from Toronto or they're from this and that. It's just like, this is hip hop. That was the culture I was brought up on, right?
I just had to, like, I've always been the guy, like, the sense of hometown pride. You know what I mean? Like, I love the city. Like, this is the city we're from. You know what I mean?
100%. We have to rap.
Right. So
what made you and Thrust, like, create that podcast?
It was after Views, the album Views came out. There was a whole bunch of all this shit about, like, oh, yo, he's stealing the fucking patois slangs from Skepta and da-da-da. And I'm like, yo, don't you kids know about Cardi and Mishi Me
and Toronto and the city?
Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's where it comes from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there was something else, man. There was another conversation of, like, oh, people didn't. He makes the Jellystone reference, and people didn't know who the fuck Jellystone was. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, Jellystone had a huge.
Money can't buy me happiness.
I didn't even have to say it. You did it, right?
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So it's like, I'm like, wow, man, these kids really don't know their history. And it just so happens 30 Rocks. At that point, I had moved into the basement. So by the time when you had came to check
That's
me,
when we were. Yeah.
okay, so
That's
I was
where
in
we
the,
met. Yeah.
Okay, so I was in the basement. Thrust came over just on the random one day, and I was sitting there making beats, and we're shooting the shit, and like, that's how the whole it was a conversation he and I had, and then we're like, yo, you know what, man, we should do a fucking podcast about this. Thrust lived it. You know what I mean? I lived it from a certain point on till, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I have like this enthusiasm for it. And that was what the genesis, that was like what led us to doing it.
Why do you think, hold on, let me rewind it back to Jellystone for a second. Because this is a kid question.
Sure.
I don't know if anyone has this answer though, if you have this answer. I remember that song Money was part 2. That was part 2 of a 2-parter song. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
It was Money Can't Buy Me Happiness part 2.
Yeah.
I never heard part 1. Did anyone?
I don't know. I have the CD upstairs. We'll see if it's on there.
Please.
I have the 12-inch too, but I know.
Before I go, I need to hear it. Because I don't want to look it up on YouTube. Okay. I want that real,
we'll look it up.
that energy. You know what I'm saying? Because it's 2001 and I love this video. I love the girls in the video. And I'm singing
Shout out
there.
to Jelly, man. Like,
but I'm like, this is part 2. I didn't hear part 1 yet. Where do we live where we released part 2 before part 1, right? As a single. I never heard part 1. I thought it never existed.
Well, hold on. There's a classic song called The Night's Young by Red Life.
Okay.
And it's if you want the rest, and check me in the remix of the song. The remix of the song was the original version.
Okay.
It was one of those, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, so it's kind of like one of those things, you know?
Everyone's watching this like, who the fuck are these guys talking about?
Right?
Which leads me to my next question.
Sure.
Like, why do you feel like people didn't know about Toronto? Like, there is so much that has happened here prior to Drake.
Oh my God.
But it's like nothing happens until Drake hits to the world. Even to the people from the city.
No, you had your blips, man. You have your Cardi with like fucking
Cardi with Akon and
right?
all of that.
And then like Chaos had his little, and Kanon, and like come on. There was all these little blips, you know.
Nelly Furtado. That's Canada stuff, though, not Toronto specific.
Right, right. But you know what I'm saying? So like you had the
Soul and members, no? Does it?
I mean, sure, yeah, those guys did their thing. You know what I mean? I think it's the infrastructure here was never. It's never been for
us.
For an urban market, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. What do I know?
But I feel, I don't know if you agree, but I feel like it still isn't. That's why he had to leave to go get what he wanted, right? Like, I still feel like we don't have anything here.
I don't know, man. I don't follow the new stuff, but like, come on. Look, when you have guys like Mustafa the Poet, who else? Like, all these young guys, Safe. You know what I mean? Like, come on. That whole OVO camps, you know what I mean? Like, from Party to like all those guys. So, like, people are paying attention to Toronto now. Yeah. I love it. Even though it's like some of the music's not for me, I love seeing Toronto do its thing. You know what I mean? Like that's all we ever wanted to see, you know?
It's true. Yeah. We always felt like we were like we had the ability to match whatever was going on over there. You know what I mean? In the States and stuff.
Talent's always been here.
Exactly. So what kind of music do you like? Like, what if you were to tell the listeners like your vibe? What are you playing in the car when the kids aren't around?
No, I listen to everything, even when the kids are around. You know what I mean?
You show them. You put them on game.
Yeah. One of my son's favorite joints is like Danger Zone by Big L, because 139 in Lennox is the Danger Zone, and his name is Lennox, right? So he just loves to hear his name. I mean, but I listen to a little bit of everything. Yeah. Like, I mean, the listener can't see it, but there's about 5,000 records over there, and it's a little bit. I saw it when we came in. It's a little bit of everything, you know what I mean? There's a little bit of rock and roll, there's a little bit of soul, there's hip hop, you know what I mean? Like, but for the most part, I listen to hip hop, you know what I mean? Like, I have a Spotify list, and I'll put it on shuffle and go from there. You know what I mean? It's just music comes so fast now. You know what I mean? It's so hard to keep up with everything. You know. But
I feel like that's specifically in hip hop and like the R&B categories. I don't feel like there's
I feel like music in general, man. Music, like, every day 1,000 albums come out from if you're going across the spectrum of genres, man. Like,
we have access to so much music coming out at a vast pace. It's like from the whole world, right? Because it's all in the
Exactly.
palm of our
Exactly.
hands. So I agree with that actually.
So then, you know, stuff catches you. You know what I mean? Like, I love me some Griselda. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I know that you were saying like what's your attention span with some of the new stuff? Like aside from Griselda, like what's something that you heard and you're still with it today? Like you've kept with it.
I like the new Tyler album. Like I've been listening to that quite a bit. That's only
mm.
it only been like what, not even a week it's out.
See,
right?
I didn't even know he released it. I came across some of the videos, and I'm like, I saved it for later. I want to take it.
And
in.
he did his Gangsta Grills tape too. Like with,
DJ Drama.
Right?
I thought I heard DJ Drama on it, but I wasn't
love
sure.
it,
So
yeah?
I'm like, let me
it,
save
you know
this
what I
and
mean?
come back
so like
to
that's
it.
the kind of stuff I love. See, but I'm a man, like I listen to like Freddie Gibbs and that kind of stuff, and like Currency and those guys. I still love me some Devin the Dude, and he's still
Smoker music.
right? Exactly.
I love Devin the Dude
Right?
too. His last 2 projects.
So I'm just like,
I'll be playing it in the car, and the girls don't even know who this guy is, and I'm like, you need to know who Devin the Dude is, right? And I always thought, growing up, I thought Devin was from the West Coast, but he's
from the
Houston.
South, man.
Yeah,
He's a Houston cat.
yeah, but like he collaborated with so many
Squad.
West people. He was always on like West Coast tracks and harmonizing and singing, and I always thought he was from the West.
Well, you know, everybody thinks of him because he's on the Dre album. I just
Exactly.
wanna fuck.
Exactly.
Right? Like, the big
Exactly.
two, right? So.
Yeah, I had to hide that album
Yeah.
when I bought it because my mom used to give me allowance, right? And I used to buy my albums. Like I would go to Music World, and I'm like, yes, every week I bought 01, I bought Dre, I bought Volume 3, and those were like my first official albums that I went to the store and bought. Do you remember your first album you went to buy?
I'll tell you a great story.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a true story. I used to live in Rexdale, across the street from Albion Mall, and there was a Music World in the back of Albion Mall. Okay. So I tried to buy NWA.
Straight out of Compton?
Yeah, and they wouldn't sell it to me because I was too young. They're like, you have to come back with somebody older.
Yeah.
Now, my brother is 4 years older than me. He was in grade 9. So how old are you when you're grade 9? 13 maybe 14?
Yeah.
So I get my brother to try and go and buy the tape for me. And they're like, nah, man, you got to bring somebody who's over 19 to come buy this tape for you. Nobody
So
I know
crazy.
is going to buy this tape for me.
Yeah.
So one day I go with my boy. We used to go to the mall for lunch every day, and I was like, yo, I'm going to go and get that tape today.
Yeah.
And there used to be this big girl.
Was it a tape?
It was a tape.
Yeah, tape. Yeah.
There used to be this big girl who worked in there. So I just waited till the day that she was working, and I just went in the store and I
You
grabbed
knew her or no?
No, I didn't know her, man.
Round the way girl? No?
No, man. I just had no clue. I just knew she was a big girl. I'm like, yo, this girl's not catching me, man. And I went in and I stole the tape. And I ran.
Stole the tape.
So this is like, yo, this is Albion Mall in Rexdale if you know it now. But, yo, Finch didn't run through there. It used to be a big field.
Yeah.
And I'm booking through the field, going back to school. I have to hide the tape underneath, portables, the steps of the portables and shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Come get the tape after school, bring it home. I had to break off the fucking. Remember the tapes used to come in the plastic case, and you had to unlock them and shit back in the day, right?
Yeah. CDs, same thing with the CDs outside.
I had to break that shit off. Boom, get the tape now. Only for about, I don't know, maybe a month later, my Aunt Anna comes to my house, and she's in the garage. She comes in the garage. I'm listening to the tape, like, yo, what are you listening to? Da-da-da. She's like, oh, yo, you shouldn't be listening to this. And she takes the tape from me.
Yeah.
Okay. So you fast forward, I don't know, maybe a couple months later, she's picking us up to take us somewhere. We get in the whip, and she's got the NWA tape in the tape deck, and she's bumping Dope Man like it's her favorite joint. You know what I mean? I'm like, yo, what the fuck, man? You took the tape from me. She's like, yeah, you're not supposed to be having this. You know what I mean?
How much were tapes back then?
Fuck,
For perspective purposes.
I want to say they would have probably been like $9.99, $8.99 type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Good old PK, right?
I love it though. I love after when you're editing this, like it sounds sick. It provides like an atmosphere. You
Good
know
old
what I'm saying?
PK.
City shit.
Right?
No, I feel you. I don't know how I got away with buying Dre's album and Volume 3 by myself.
The first thing I ever
This was in Richmond Hill though.
remember going to spend money on, my parents bought me, like when I graduated from grade 8, they bought me a little bookshelf stereo.
Yeah.
So I went and bought my first CDs, and it was The Far Side, Bizarre Ride to the Far Side, and Heavy D Blue Funk.
Jesus.
Was the first 2 CDs I bought.
R.I.P.
Music-
Heavy D.
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember Yeah, I had to hide some of my albums, man. And some of the stuff I was listening to, I'm like, yo, this is music. Like, I'm being exposed to hip hop. Like Marshall Mathers LP, Ludacris's first album. Like,
I need context.
Yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 32 now.
Okay, so there's a 10-year gap between us. I'm
Okay.
43, you're 32.
Okay.
That's right?
Okay. Yeah. So my era, for me, like 90s and up, you know? Anything prior to that, like I could still, there are some things that I revisit and indulge in, but I love the 90s and up, you know what I'm saying? That's my kind of like.
Same here.
Yeah.
I listen to some 80s. There's definitely some 80s
Some
stuff
80s,
that
yeah.
I
You
love,
probably
you know
know
what
more
I mean, right?
than I do. But yeah. Who was the first artist? Actually, no, let's focus on Toronto. So like, who's your favorite Toronto artist?
I mean, it's
or
always
artist from Toronto. I don't like to call them Toronto artists because that limits them.
Atom Bomb.
Don't know him.
No?
Who's that?
He's from Empire Crew back in the day. He was part of the Freedom Riders, part of Naturally Born Strangers. They won a Juno Award.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Probably one of the dopest MCs I've ever heard.
Mm.
That's me personally, though.
Is that who inspired you to get into hip hop?
No. What got me into hip hop was probably, you know, when you're a kid, you follow fashion to what your older brother listens to. You know what I mean?
100.
And that's, my brother used to skateboard and shit, and he was always onto stuff. And so what I remember, Pancho, I don't know if you remember, do you remember back in the day there used to be somebody that had a video show, and it was Chris something, I feel like. It wasn't Chris Shepard, but they had a video mix show back in the day.
From the city?
I don't know if it was, no, it wasn't Chum 30, but anyways, my brother used to tape this video mix show every week, and this 1 week
taping shit,
right?
Yeah.
Right?
Taping stuff.
on VHS.
Oh my god! And taping over stuff and then getting in trouble for it.
So this is how it all happens now.
Yeah.
There was one particular episode of whatever this show was, and it's Ice-T I'm Your Pusha video, and it went into Bismarck, he's something for the radio.
Yeah.
And yo, I must have watched that one piece of tape. I don't know how many hours in my life I watched that, like rewound and watched that one piece of tape. So now my brother used to tape over the shit every week. So I now had to go and buy another tape and like ask my dad, yo, can I have whatever $5 to go to Kmart and buy a blank tape so Adam won't tape over the tape? You know what I mean? Like one of those type of shit.
So is that what got you into
and
it?
Then and then that's kind of like the genesis of it. You know what I mean? So then my brother's skateboarding and listening to other shit and like, you know, listening to, you know, Beasties is in there and like all that kind of stuff, 2 Live Crew and stuff. And I guess like that was really, and then I remember seeing like Backbone video. You know what I mean? Being like, oh shit, and seeing a TTC streetcar behind it and being like, oh shit, yo, this is people from Toronto and like, you know?
Yeah. My first exposure to Toronto rap was probably like I knew the Maestro Fresh West stuff and Mitchie Me stuff, right? But I was still really young, so I didn't have a concept of like, oh, this is people from up the street, people who live like, you know, because I was born in the Maze.
Okay,
you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, okay, I'm hearing these names, I see these videos on Much Music, but I don't whatever. But On With The Show from Cardi.
Oh, Cardi, yeah.
That's when I was like, God damn, like this is like some raw, rugged, just raw, you know.
Toronto
and I'm,
stuff,
right? Like my aunt was teaching me, like, yo, that guy's from our city, you know. And I was like, this is crazy. And then I see like people in the video, and she's teaching me the names, like Socrates is there, and then I see Chocolare stuff, you know, and it just starts to go, and I'm paying attention to these things, Much Music and like Urs. Like in 01, you know, like those guys really like inspired me. And I'm like, who are these guys? T-Dot Anthem. Like that was my first time when I was representing.
We come to mash it down.
I didn't know anything about representing the city until that song came out, but that didn't get that light. But like that track is like crazy.
I mean, for me, I grew up in Rex. My boy was Remy from Red Life. And like, so I kind of was seeing it firsthand. You know what I mean? Like I saw it as it was happening.
You were there, yeah.
You know, and it was just like I had the luxury of seeing that. You know what I mean?
So if you were there, right? Like from your perspective, why do you feel, if you feel this way, like it didn't become, and infrastructure aside, right? Like we had a movement we had little pockets like Figure 4 Entertainment and, you know, the Circle and all of that. Everyone, there's so many people that are together.
Listen, there's definitely something Toronto doesn't get enough credit for, and that is that, like, the DIY, like the independent label shit.
Yeah.
Toronto was killing that in the 90s, man. You know what I mean? Like Groove a Lot doing all the ghetto concept and the Concrete Mob stuff, and like you're saying Figure 4 and those guys, and like, you know, Capitol Hill.
Was Choclair the first one?
No,
he wasn't from Toronto though, right?
He was, I think, the first one to get signed to a major.
Yeah.
No, like minus like maybe the Dream Warriors and those guys, you know what I mean?
Because it was his first album, not the Memoirs of Blake Savage.
No, Ice Cold.
Ice Cold. That's the one that kind of propelled things. Yeah,
all that stuff.
That song would kind of propelled the city and like to a different level. So
yeah, man, Toronto, man, you know.
What do you, from like your perspective now, where do you think, what's next for the city when it comes to music and hip hop, if you see anything?
I think we're in a great, like, honestly, like I said, man, like I see the guys like Mustafa the Poet and those guys, and like I think Toronto's in a great place musically, man. Like, you have all the guys making the trap stuff, like, and some of them guys are really good apparently. Like it's not for, like I said, once again, it's not for me, you know what I mean? But
yes.
Like, and then, you know, like, I mean, fuck, Drake is the top dog, man. Like, as much as people want to like deny that or like whatever they want, like, you can't.
But what's next after that? You know,
who knows? Who
like,
knows?
Like,
how do you crown that, man?
Yeah,
Like, how? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah. What let's shout out I realized we didn't shout out the actual podcast name with you and Thrust.
It's called Views Before the Six.
Okay.
It's on SoundCloud. It's on iTunes and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Views Before the Six.
Views Before the Six, ladies and gentlemen. If there's anything that you're hearing today in the conversation between me and Big Tweeze, Mr. Anthony, Mr. Father, and it resonates with you, feel free to touch base with the club at Who How Club on all social media platforms. Send us an email, whohowclub@gmail.com. If there's anything that Tweeze has said that has triggered a thought or any questions that you have for him, you could do that, or even on the live right now. Right. Touch base with him. Give them your socials as well.
Oh, at Big Tweeze everywhere.
Yeah, and you could look on my list and you'll see him there. You could follow him and touch base. Let's get back to you as an individual.
Okay.
So I know that you answered like, who are you, right? But like, if you had like just a few minutes to talk, like, let's say your child asked you like, dad, father, like, how would you describe yourself in like 3 words? What are those 3 words that you would share to your child in describing yourself? You know, this is a little person, a little version of you looking up to you, but they don't know that much about you, but they want to know, like, how does my dad describe himself?
See, it's funny though, because I would more so want to know how my son would describe me, right? You know what I mean? Like, that's more important to me than me describing myself to him. Like, I wouldn't even know what to say to him in that regard. You get what I'm saying?
So how do you think he or she, both of them?
Both it's different. They're 2 different ages, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. What do you think they see when they look at you?
I don't know. It's funny because the other day I was asking my kid that. Like, we were at the park and we were running laps around the schoolyard and shit like that. You know what I mean? And I was like, yo, when you see that, what does that make you feel? You know what I mean? Because, yo, my son was a big part of me wanting to lose weight in the first place, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, when you see that, what does it make you feel? And he was like, I don't know. It's just who you are. And I was like, that's interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's who he views me as, you know?
Yeah. So you said that they were sort of like the inspiration of you losing weight. How much weight did you lose?
100 pounds. Right? It was more so a question. He had asked me a question one day. He was like, it ties into him and my homeboy who Poncho knows, my boy Paul Dollar. He was like, long story short, he has this annual Christmas party every year. And one year he was like, yo, you know, he says to my girl, he's like, yo, how's Tweeze's health doing, man? Like, he's putting on a little bit of weight, man. You know what I mean? And like, so this is my homie who's like zero.
That's a real friend.
No,
That's a real friend, right?
Right. But the thing is, and this is a guy who had like 0 cares in the world. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, oh, the fact that he's asking that is like interesting, right?
He's concerned. Yeah.
So this is like, we'll call it a Saturday. Maybe on like the Tuesday, it's raining, and I'm driving the kids to school, and my son says to me, he's in the back, and he's like, hey, Daddy, how do people get fat? And I'm like, oh, by like eating unhealthy and not exercising, like that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? He's like, oh, is that how you got fat? And I was like, and I looked in the rear view, and he was looking out the window. So, you know, like he wasn't trying to get a response, like, you know what I'm talking about? Like a reaction, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, shit.
He was truly curious.
It was a genuine question,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I was like, oh, shit. Yo, that's twice in as little as a week. And that was more so, I was like, okay, yo, it made me take a look at it. And I came home that day, and I weighed myself, and I was like 330 pounds. Right?
Yeah,
Right?
I was introduced to Big Tweeze.
Exactly.
When,
right?
you know,
Well, and that's the thing.
when I
like,
saw you today walk into the house, I'm like, I don't recognize this guy. I recognize the old guy,
Right,
but
right,
this
right.
is a newer version of you, right?
and so it's everything that goes with that. Like, you think about the studio having that shit, and like, you know, late nights, going for food after, drinking, doing all that kind of shit. You know what I mean? Like the lifestyle that goes with that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It'll catch up to you real quick.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
What's that journey been like for you? Like, how would you describe it other than challenging? I'm sure it's been challenging.
Oh, it's challenging, but it's been very like rewarding.
Yeah.
Obviously, right? You know what I mean? To lose 100 pounds, very rewarding, right?
Yes,
you know
yes.
what I mean?
Congrats.
Yeah, challenging is definitely the big thing. You know what I mean? Because it's funny because everybody's like, oh, yo, how'd you do it? And I'm like, I'll tell you, but you're not gonna like the answer. You know what I mean? And nobody likes the answer. And it's, I run 5 kilometers every day. You know what I mean?
God.
Right?
What about your eating habits? Like, what did you
Clearly,
change in the eating?
yeah. Like I changed the way I eat. A big, huge thing for me was putting a calorie counter on my phone,
Wow.
so you actually like see it, and
Yes.
you're like, oh shit.
That's a motivator.
Those 2 for $5 BK chicken sandwiches are like 1,200 calories at 3 o'clock in the morning before you're going to bed, right? Like, you see that real quick, right?
Yeah. That's inspiring. Like, it kind of reminds me of like I've been sharing my journey to therapy. Like, I just recently started therapy in my life, right? And my entire life, like, it was in front of me. Those opportunities were being presented to
go to therapy,
and I would just shut that shit down. I'm like, I don't need it, whatever.
Why? Do you remember why you would shut that shit down?
It was feeling like, you ever feel like you just don't need something?
100%.
Even though things are like showing you probably do.
100%.
But like, who are you to tell me what I need, you know?
I think it's a part of it is a little bit of ignorance to it too, right? Not knowing like
what you don't. Yeah,
right? Like,
there's a fear component
sure.
too, right? Like, why would I talk to a stranger? Like, who knows me better than me?
Fair enough.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I'm just referencing journeys, you know, like, of course, weight loss and therapy and talking to someone for mental health reasons are different, but I think there's a connection there as well.
Sure.
Because you feel better.
Right.
After your transition, you view yourself differently. You feel better about yourself.
But it's funny because everybody asks me all the time. They're like, "Yo, do you love it?" And I'm like, "No, I still fucking hate it." Every time. Like, every time I go out to run, I'm like, "All right, you know, I got to do this now." You know what I mean? Like,
no, I needed it. Yeah, I couldn't get in.
So it's
so
just,
you hate it.
It's not the same.
It's yeah.
But here's the thing: when I'm done afterwards,
where is it?
I love it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. You feel better after the fact.
But it's still a mind fuck every time.
The email.
Every time, right? It's still a mind fuck.
Manager.
Poncho. You
Manager.
You don't gotta tell me, man. You don't gotta tell me.
I got him back. Listen.
What email was it?
The council one.
I'm in there, but you're gonna have to figure out whatever you were looking.
Yeah, it's right here. I got it. Thanks. How long have you known Carlos?
What's it been, Ponch? Like 15, 20 years now?
So
20 plus years, let's call it.
So you've been there through his like disdain for like managing and being
I was probably part of the reason. let's call it what it is, right? I was probably part of the reason.
Listen, conversations with this guy, they've been like
we can't discuss the Jay Stacks era. That's the only thing we can't.
No.
Poncho's hair will start falling out again.
No. I'm just saying, like, he's back.
Yeah.
He's back. And I feel responsible for that. Like, we've been having convos and, for years. A lot of the things we used to talk about, like, even when I was a younger,
Right.
and I would see him at the shop, and we would make runs, like when he brought me to your studio space and stuff like that. Like, we would talk about things, but we never worked together. And now that we're at this, we're finally being able to do the things we always spoke about, which I think is really dope. Are you gonna be going hard or hard again in the things that you started with anytime soon?
I don't know, man. I'd like to pick up the podcast again. Like, we saw a lot. Like, it's really funny. We took a little hiatus. We recorded one episode, and then the pandemic hit, and then it all just fell by the wayside again. But I'd love to pick that up again.
You were saying earlier off camera, like you haven't really been making beats.
I haven't been making
Why is
music.
that?
I don't know, man. It's just like, I don't know. It's just not there for me right now, you know? It's just one of those things. I got to be in a vibe to do that kind of stuff.
What would inspire you to create before?
I don't know.
Beats and stuff, and be in that constant.
It was just such a part of me, you know what I mean? Like, especially having the studio was a whole other thing, right? Like, it was just like a daily habit. It was like
second nature.
Just like working out is now. And I think that's kind of what's like running and doing all that is what's replaced that for me now, you know? The hour or whatever I'd spend making beats before,
You're focusing on your health.
I'm running now, you know what I mean? Like that kind of shit.
That's how I felt with music myself too. Like, I took a little break and focusing on the podcast stuff. And then after Carlos, like, coming out of his shell and us having all these plans and stuff, it's like, that's inspiring me again, right? So I understand what it means to, like, sometimes you do have to step away from the things you love, take a little break, get some new inspiration. Like, you'll never have the same inspiration.
Right.
It'll transform into things that when you step away from it, because you love it so much, you'll never stop it. It's just, I'm on a break.
Now here's the other thing too, right? Like, as we were talking about it before, as life is going in these cycles and whatnot, right? Like, if I'm gonna make music, I want to make music with purpose now. You know what I mean? Like, I'm being a father of two, and I don't want to make music just to make music anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like,
there has to be a purpose.
Sure, right?
That's the wave that we're on. That's what brought us back.
Like, I don't want to, like, I could sell beats and do shit like that, and like, to guys if I didn't care, and but like, there's an integrity to it. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, because you care so much about it. Right? It's you. It's a piece of
cliche
who
as it
you
sounds,
are.
right?
No.
You know?
Because it's a piece of who you are.
Right.
You don't want to give that away anymore without some sort of, like you said, purpose.
And that's to say, even just to do it, I don't want to do it without intention anymore, right? You know what I mean? Like
100%. I wanted us to go into, let's touch on the transitional stuff, because I'm big on transitions and like reflecting on who we were. Right. Versus who we are now, and maybe who we want to be or see ourselves being. So, who was Tweezy a decade ago?
A decade ago,
describe that guy to us.
33, no kids, no responsibilities, taking care of myself, having the studio, a lot more music focused. You know
what about his personality? Stubborn guy?
Always. Anybody like, still am, you know what I mean? Probably a lot less carefree, you know what I mean?
More carefree.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel now that I have kids, I've become even more uptight. You know what I mean?
What about 10 years from now? Who's Tweezy?
I don't know, man. I hope to be somewhere. I don't know. You know what? It's very funny. I work in a job where, like, I've been there. I'm at like this like apex of my job where I've been there for 15 years, and it's like
time to go.
It's either time to go or ride it out till the wheels fall off.
But you're at the apex.
I know, right?
Where else is there to go?
I know. So it's like, no, I'm at this more so like this crossroads. It's
crossroads.
Right?
Yeah, because the apex is like the tip of it.
So it's either
nowhere.
I see it out
fall off.
and go to one spot in it, or just like,
right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know, man. Like, I always would like to go and live somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Relocate.
Somewhere. Go and live somewhere else. Cause
are you a man of the woods? Do you see yourself being one of those?
I could love to, like, I've always, it's been a dream that I've wanted to make like a record at a cottage type shit. You know what I mean? I love that kind of stuff.
Like escape, create a record, then come back to the...
And then come back to the city. Yeah, you know what I mean? Spend a month in a cottage.
We need to do that.
right? Like,
Just get away, create, and then come back and
those are the beautiful, like those are the best times. Yeah.
yeah. I feel you. It's crazy, like how time, like again, bringing up Carlos, like the conversations we've been having, it's like so much can change in a year. It's like
man.
this time next year, where are we gonna be? We know it's not here. You know what I mean? Like,
just put it in context. Think about where we were a year from now.
Exactly.
A year from today.
From today, yeah.
Right? And then
A year ago today.
Before
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Like, it was 2 different lifetimes.
Mm.
Right?
Aside from being a father and your music stuff, what else inspires you as a person? What keeps you going? You're on your journey to, you know, staying fit. You're a father. What else?
Honestly, like being the father part of it is the big part. I can't wait to see where my kids are going.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? It's funny because everybody's always like, "Oh, yo, you're gonna get them into music and da da da," and I'm like, whatever their path is. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And I can't wait to find out what it is.
All right, lightning round.
Okay, go.
Don't overthink this though.
Okay, go.
When did you become you?
Without overthinking it, in my 20s. When I moved out of my parents' house, that's when I became me, because then I realized very, very young that, yo, you have to take care of you.
Where are you from? But not the Rexdale stuff. Just when you think of yourself, like, where do you come from? How would you answer that?
I come from a good family. I come from like a hard-working family. Like, that's always been, like, work has always been a big thing within my family and shit like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's definitely where I feel like I come from. You know what I mean?
Why are you here?
I don't know. I still don't know that answer. You know what I mean? Now I'm here to take care of my kids. But 10 years from now, I don't know why I'm here. You know what I mean? That changes like I said, like we were talking about, like, I feel like every decade has been a different lifetime for me. You know what I mean?
Was there, with the why, like, was there a time where you looked in the mirror and you're like, oh, this is why I'm here? Like, are there moments of that in your life? Like, oh, this is why I'm here.
Definitely, man. Like, every day when I see my kids, that's like I realize this is why I'm here, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every day.
How have you survived?
By all means necessary. By all means necessary, right?
Yeah. What does survival look like to you, like, after today? Like, how are you gonna keep going? Keep this story of Big Tweeze continuing? Is it through your children? Is it through creating? Is it?
It's never through, like, that's actually like a great question. Is it through your children? No, it's never through your children, man. Your children is their own path. They're gonna do their own thing. You know what I mean? And that's funny, like I said, because people always ask me, "Oh, you're gonna get them into music and shit like that?" Like, no, I don't want them to live. I hate when I see people trying to relive their dreams through their kids and shit.
Yucky.
You know what I'm saying?
That's
like,
messy.
You know what I mean?
That's messy. In the long run, that's messy.
That's not for me. You know what I mean?
That's gonna bite you in the butt,
right?
Because you're forcing yourself, your past dreams onto your youngin'. They're not an individual at that point. You're not allowing them to be themselves. It's just a splitting image of you, and that's kind of narcissistic in a way. Like,
right.
let them, if they decide to do that, that's fine, but don't push that onto them from a young age, and then they won't develop into their own person.
Exactly.
So
there's always been this running joke from my son was born, because, you know, my girlfriend's Jewish and I'm Catholic, so it's always like they're always the thing like, oh, what are you gonna raise him? Are you gonna raise him Jewish? You're gonna raise him Catholic? Da da da. And I was like, so I always used to be the guy who's like, I'm gonna let him decide whatever he wants to be. If he wants to be Jewish, he can be Jewish. If he wants to be Catholic, he can be Catholic. If he wants to be Muslim, he can be Muslim. He could be whatever he finds, if that's what he's after. You know what I mean? Like, I'm only Catholic because my parents are Catholic. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So that's life choices. Exactly. You know what I mean? For them to make. That's
good. That's like, it's inspiring to hear that you are that kind of parent now and will be in the future, because it sounds like you're going to be very supportive of whatever decision they make, and you're not you don't need them to do to be anything like you per se.
See, it's funny, man, because the one thing like I take from parenting is that like you forget all the dumb shit that you did, right? You know what I mean? Like sometimes,
like as someone's kid, like you were someone's
you
kid.
were someone's kid before,
and
right?
now you
like,
have kids.
Exactly, man. You know what I'm saying? Like it's funny, man. Like you forget that shit.
Well, we forget. Yeah, when we become adults, we forget that we were once children.
And it's funny because I forgot it from like the one child to the next, you know, from the 7-year-old to the 4-year-old, the 3-year gap. I forgot. Oh yeah, she's gonna do this. She's gonna do that. She's gonna do this. She's gonna do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so it's funny.
What was life in Rex?